After the closing chapter of an iconic franchise was released last weekend, it's all everyone's been talking about. Halloween Ends tied up a 44-year-long run, and it's been an emotional ride. But currently, people are concerned with how it ended. Fans had high expectations for the finale, but it didn't hit the way it should have. So today, we're going over the ending of the film and all the alternate endings that didn't make the cut. First, what was Halloween Ends about? After the continuity in the events of Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills, Ends opens with a 4-year time jump, with Laurie attempting to live a regular life with her granddaughter Allison, portrayed by Andy Matichak. Another character is added to the mix, and he soon becomes an important part of the plot. Allison's new boyfriend, Corey, played by Rowan Campbell, is apparently going through a downward spiral. But in a town like Haddonfield, this spiral isn't just an independent event. Michael Myers isn't far behind as evil rears its ugly head once more. Opening with $41 million at the box office, Ends topped in the UK and North America, but many of the viewers left the cinemas disappointed by the film's structure and lack of Michael Myers. It currently has a rotten score on Rotten Tomatoes from both critics and audiences, who believe it squandered a lot of franchise potential. The final chapter takes a surprising direction in putting Michael Myers on the bench to focus on the story of copycat murderer Corey Cunningham. The film centers on the development of Corey's character, particularly his bond with Laurie's granddaughter Allison, as well as his attempts to conceal his escalating levels of aggression. Eventually, he becomes the match that ignites the final fire. But before we get into the actual ending, let's go over the alternates. Next, how come there are multiple alternate endings? David Gordon Green, director of the reboot trilogy, discussed 2 possible endings for Halloween Ends that were proposed during the production with The Wrap. There was a version where Laurie didn't make it, the filmmaker said, confirming a suspicion many fans had. And there's a version where Corey did make it. While those variations weren't what the audiences got to see on the big screen, the writers certainly considered a wide variety of ending scenes before they chose that one. Interestingly, the sequence that the film actually ends with was a very late addition to the film. In order to put together the most optimum experience for the audience, Green held multiple screenings with various cuts to see which of them incited the best response. "I want to watch the audience as much as I'm watching the movie," said Green. "I'm ping-ponging back and forth, trying to see when they're engaged and when they're not." The second film in the trilogy was noisy and aggressive, mimicking an action film at times. That's why, for this film, the tone was more dramatic and intimate. However, during the screenings, he realized that there were instances where the film just wasn't big enough and lacked scope. The film was missing something grand, and it was during the last 2 months before the film came out that the team added the town procession sequence to fill up that gap. That ending scene made it past the screenings and was chosen for the final cut. Following up, what were the other routes the film could have taken? Green delved into the 2 alternate endings further and shared what went behind them. In the first case, they reached the point where Laurie put a gun in her mouth and realized that this moment could be pivotal to the ending. Therefore, the writers took their time to come up with multiple ways that the situation could pan out and decided to surprise each other with their ideas. According to Green, there were a couple of doors, and they explored what waited behind each door until they reached the best door. Primarily, they wanted to work towards making Laurie and Michael's final confrontational brawl as cathartic and satisfying as they could. In order to retain the emotion and pain that went into it, they had to build up the anticipation for it to really come down crashing on the viewers. When it came to Corey's character, the team took time to figure out how this story should roll out. In the alternate version, he would have survived and that could have given him an arc. But eventually, Green decided to end his character's life within the film as he didn't want his story to be open-ended. Apparently, the filmmaker got a bit attached to the character he had made and didn't want a possible continuation to take him and turn him into Shape 2.0. As his vision for the film narrowed in, he realized that the best course of action was to kill him off before the end and wrap his story up nicely. Up next, what was the actual ending? Justice prevails and evil is squashed out as Ends wrapped up the trilogy with Michael Myers' death, followed by a parade, and it's unquestionably a low point for the Halloween franchise. Michael's lifeless body was strapped to the top of a car and paraded around Haddonfield while being accompanied by police before arriving at a junkyard, where the locals collectively hurled the body into a crusher. This scene ended the reboot trilogy on an odd note, as it appeared to have missed many of the themes of the trilogy. As for Corey, he was unceremoniously killed off by Michael Myers, and that led to the confrontational fight between Laurie and him, eventually ending in the debatable procession scene. If the team had aimed for that scene to be impactful, the entire film should have focused more on Laurie and Michael's never-ending battle. However, with the route they decided to take, the ending scene felt more like it was made solely to create questionable shots for the trailer. Unlike the original Halloween, which focused on Myers' murders of a few babysitters, the reboot trilogy centered on his legacy and influence on the town of Haddonfield, specifically how the residents of Haddonfield became monsters themselves. The remake trilogy brought on a bunch of new characters, expanding the setting of Haddonfield much beyond its original scope. As a result, the final chapter ended with the march scene to highlight Haddonfield's victory over Myers, declaring that they had finally erased the source of long-standing fear. However, the procession sequence contradicted the previous film's themes, which were all about the risks of mob justice and witch hunts. By closing Halloween Ends with a scene in which the locals throw Myers into the junkyard crusher, it appears as if the film has completely detached itself from previous themes. This conclusion could have worked if the ending was taking on a darker tone by demonstrating that the evil shape had truly won by turning Haddonfield citizens into violent monsters, but it didn't appear to send that message as it is. Moving on, Myers' death should have been Laurie's victory. Now, the main reason that the procession scene is being considered a low point for Halloween is that Michael Myers' death should have been about Laurie, not Haddonfield. Laurie Strode's character arc rested on her anxiety regarding Myers' return as the rest of the town moved on in the wake of his horrific killings. She's been the driving force behind the entire series since the very beginning, but the procession scene gives the impression that Myers' long-awaited death was a collaborative effort. Furthermore, Laurie was despised by the residents of Haddonfield, who harassed her throughout the film and blamed her for Michael's return. Due to this, killing Myers should have been a victory for her over evil and the entire town of Haddonfield. Instead, the parade was turned into a celebration for the entire community, leaving the impression that the film had lost touch with the trilogy's themes. Finally, which of these endings could have been the best? The film did give audiences a definite death of Myers, which any of the proposed potential endings would have provided as well. However, the alternate endings each left something to be desired. Laurie's previously been killed off in Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, and Halloween Resurrection, making her potential death in Halloween Ends a difficult idea to try. Corey, on the other hand, was a stranger to the franchise until the final chapter began to put him in the spotlight as a possible replacement for Myers. While Corey eventually died, passing the torch in such a legendary horror brand can be difficult, as the Friday the 13th franchise attempted something similar in Part 5 with disappointing results. Some viewers do wish that Corey wasn't introduced at all, as his involvement took away from the main characters. As a result, his death was probably the best for the franchise. But even though Michael's death and Laurie's happy ending tied up the chapter perfectly, viewers are divided on the film's quality, perhaps due to the nature in which it was done. Still, it's safe to say the expectations for Halloween Ends were too high to have been met in any case. And that's all for this video, guys. What do you think of Ends? Was it a satisfactory closing chapter? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this, and we'll see you in the next one.